What's up guys, welcome back to a brand new video. So Merry Christmas Eve everybody. I'm filming this on Christmas Eve and I'm hoping to get this video out on Christmas Eve. This is the cycle of videos I've been wanting to do for a little while. It's already a little late in the day, it's like 1 p.m. But I'm gonna try and get these out as quick as I can, but also doing them good. I'm not trying to rush them or anything. But I hope you guys all have a Merry Christmas, and if you don't celebrate Christmas, then still happy holidays if you celebrate something else, or just happy Saturday, you know. I got 2 videos I want to post today, another one I want to post tomorrow on Christmas Day. So yeah, I wanted to wear a Santa hat for this video to show you guys I'm in the holiday spirit, but I don't have one on me. They're all at my grandma's house, so no good for that. But in this video, I'm gonna be showing you guys every single phone I have ever used in my entire life, or more or less we could call it electronic device, because I started off with a tablet, not a phone. But we could still, I'll just call it every electronic device, and I'll just show you guys like the very first device I ever used in my life, all the way up until today. So I got my very first device 8 years ago in Christmas 2014, and in the span of 8 years, I've gone through 7 phones, or 7 devices, mostly of them phones, and it's pretty insane to actually just kind of think that in the last 8 years I've used 7 of these. You could just kind of think like, oh, you've probably gone through one every year, but no, it's actually not like that. I'll tell you guys the whole stories of how I got these devices, how I enjoyed them, how long I used them for, and yeah, this is a video I've been wanting to do for a very, very long time, and what better way to do it than today on the holiday spirit, or on Christmas Eve. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. So starting from the very beginning, in Christmas of 2014, I got my very first electronic device right here. This is the Samsung Galaxy Tab 3 from 2013. It's not my exact model. I actually destroyed that one in a video 3 years ago because I was very goofy and I don't know what I was thinking. But I ended up buying another one, same model and everything, same size. It's the Galaxy Tab 3 that came out in 2013. Nice. So I got this back in Christmas of 2014. I didn't even ask for it. I actually remember what I really wanted on my list at the time back then. I was 11 years old, so you know, I wasn't really thinking straight. But I remember what I added to my Christmas list was an Xbox 360 with Grand Theft Auto 4. Yeah, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. No way I was gonna get that at that age at 11. So I got this instead, which was a Galaxy Tab 3 that came out only the year before in 2013. I remember the first time I saw this under the Christmas tree, I was so excited, and I was like, yo, let's go, I finally have my own tablet. Because the thing is, my dad had one of these as well, only I think his was like a 16-inch one, or mine was a much bigger one. I don't remember the exact dimensions. But I do remember that it was something that was similar to this, and I basically just got a smaller version of it. And I saw it, I was like, dude, yes, let's go. Because at this time, I was playing a lot of like driving games, like firefighter simulator games, bus driver games, train simulator games, and so I now had my own device to finally play these games on. So I started downloading all those games from the Google Play Store. Particularly at the time, I was really into watching the FDLC mod from Gangrene for GTA 4, which I've done a ton of videos on that. So I started looking for Firefighter Simulator, some of them, and there was one in particular that I really liked, and it was called Duty Driver, and that was a lot of fun to play. They even had the FDNY ladder truck. I remember specifically, it was like the fire truck from one of the mods I saw, so I was like, dude, this is so cool. And I started doing a bunch of things on here. I remember I was watching lots of YouTube on here. Primarily, I just had this to, you know, watch YouTube and play games, and eventually, I got Instagram. My mom made me an Instagram account, so I was able to talk with my friends and family. And then, if you guys remember Kik, the app Kik, which was a messaging app, was really popular around 2015, around that time. I used that app for a little while to text my friends, and it was pretty crazy. I didn't really take this to many places. My only time I already carried it around was only to go to my grandma's house. Nothing else after that, because the internet wouldn't work anywhere else, because, you know, I needed a good Wi-Fi connection to watch YouTube, but I was able to play my games just fine. Something that did kind of bother me at the very beginning, and I did notice this at the very beginning of using this thing, was the performance. I did notice that right away it was a little slow. We are working with some pretty underclocked specs in here. So we're working with, I believe, a 1.3 gigahertz processor and 1 gigabyte of RAM. which honestly doesn't sound terrible for 2013, but think about this. Back in the day, Android tablets were bad, like really, really bad, and this is a pretty good example of it. Not only that, but Android OS back then was also not very stable, and it was very buggy compared to today, which I'm pretty sure they've had to get it right by now. I don't use an Android, so I can't say personally, but I'm pretty sure by now they've got all their issues ironed out, because back then it was bad, really bad. And using this thing was actually a very good example of just that. If you look at the Android version, it's running Android OS 4.4.2, and I think that's Android KitKat, which it's pretty outdated. I think the last time this got a software update was 2014, so it's been 8 years. This thing only got 1 year of software updates, and after that, it just went down the drain. But I did notice towards the beginning, even using this, some games were pretty slow, they weren't the most stable, and I did notice a lot of app crashing. So it did bother me a little bit, but considering I was only 11 years old, it wasn't something that, oh, I want something new, you know, it was okay, you know. Another thing I did notice right away was the battery wasn't very good either. It would only last maybe about 3 to 4 hours before I had to charge it again, and even charging this actually wasn't the best either, because it would charge very slowly, or either that or it would just keep going down and the battery percentage, it would not even charge. So I remember that specifically had a lot of it didn't have very good charging either. One other thing I do remember about this thing was the battery did eventually die completely, like a couple months later. I don't even know what happened. I ended up turning the device, I was trying to turn the device on, and I was like, okay, the battery's dead, just go charge it. Not even the battery logo would pop up, and I don't know what was going on. So that's when we realized the battery was completely dead. So my dad just went on eBay, he bought a brand new one, and this thing has a removable back. It's a little hard, but it's actually, like, it's a little harder than probably like most Android phones. But once you actually get to like maybe prying the back out, it'll be really easy to just, you know, pop it out and put it back in. And it did have a pretty easily removable battery, so we just swapped it out and started working again. But even that, it was still a brand new battery, but even that, the battery life still wasn't great and still had some charging issues, which made me believe that it was actually the tablet's fault of that, not the battery. So yeah, that did bother me for a little bit. Then in July 2015, I started using this as a video camera to take videos on YouTube. And you guys could see if my older videos from like July 2015, yeah, they're not very good. They were filmed on this though, so this was my very first camera that I ever recorded on. But my first ever video you guys see is not my first video. I think I recorded some other random stuff back then, but I think those are all gone. So yeah, that wasn't the first video you guys see on my channel. It's not my very first video. I had some other stuff up before that, but I just deleted it. And yeah, even as a camera, it wasn't the best. In the daylight, it did fine. And you know, considering, again, I was 11, so I didn't really care that much. It was at nighttime where I was like, okay, this camera sucks. Then, something I did notice was in November 2015, out of nowhere, all the Google Play services stopped working. YouTube would not load, the Google Play Store would not load, and those were the two main Google apps I was using. So I was like, okay, what the hell's going on? And I tried restarting it, and I left it off for a while, and nothing, it didn't work. I don't know what happened, why it just randomly broke. This model I have here, the Play Store does work, the Google services do work, you can see it loads fine, you can get games like Fruit Ninja, Uno, Geometry Dash, but even some apps today that used to work on this tablet don't work anymore, they're just incompatible, like YouTube. That was my biggest surprise, that YouTube does not work at all anymore. But back to what I was saying, all the Play services died. I don't even know what happened. So, you know, I couldn't download much apps. It was kind of tricky to watch YouTube. I did eventually found the runaround. I eventually found like this browsing app for YouTube. Or I wasn't watching it on the browser, but I found an app. It was like, this is where I found out about APKs, or like, you know, like cracked version of apps that you could just get. Well, I didn't find out about Aptoide at the time. I found that out months later, but I think it was a YouTube browser app that I could just download to watch YouTube, and that's how I was watching YouTube. Then afterwards, I was like, okay, how do I download apps more easier? And that's when I found out about Aptoide. And from there, I think primarily because at the time I was a Five Nights at Freddy's fanboy, and you guys remember that phase. It was like late 2015 through like half of 2016. Or somewhere towards the ending, so it lasted me a full year there. My Five Nights at Freddy's phase, where I was a full fanboy, it lasted me about a year. But I remember I was trying to find a cracked version of the full game, and I found it on Aptoide, and that's how I found out that, oh, you can get other apps that you have to pay for for free. So that's how I kind of started downloading apps after all the Play services stopped working. But as time went on and we move on to summer 2016, the tablet now in general was starting to bother me because of the performance, the cameras, and it wasn't super convenient downloading apps off of Aptoide. Sometimes they crash, and the YouTube browser thing was also not, again, because this tablet, even for 2013, it didn't perform very well, and afterwards it was really beginning to show its age. It had similar specs to the iPhone 5S at the time, which this thing came out before the 5S, but it has similar specs basically in terms of the processors, like the gigahertz and the amount of RAM. But even that, the 5S performs so much better than this. But again, you gotta keep in mind, this is an Android tablet, and back in the day, they weren't the best at making Android tablets, and now I don't know how that works or how it's going with that, but I know back then it was really bad. But afterwards, I did begin to notice that the performance was actually going a lot worse. The battery was becoming more garbage. The camera, that bothered me a little bit, but it wasn't anything too bad, but I did want something better. And just in general, a lot of things were unstable, crashing, and I was like, okay, I need a new phone. I guess I need a phone. That's what I was going for. What I remember I wanted at the time was the iPhone 7, which was the newest iPhone that came out. But I didn't get that because it was $700 at the time, and we did not have that kind of money. So instead, my dad went on eBay, looked for some cheap stuff, and he got me this, the iPhone 5. This was my very first phone, or iPhone, whatever you want to call it. I got this on my 13th birthday in November 2016, and it was actually, I got a funny story for you guys. So at the time, I thought that the 5 had Touch ID. I didn't know that it was like there was a 5 and a 5S. I did not know about that. It was until eventually later on that I got this in the mail and I saw it didn't have Touch ID. That's when I realized, I was like, oh, they're different phones. So I was a little disappointed with that, but I wasn't too mad about it. I was like, honestly, I don't care. I have a phone, a better phone, so much better than the Samsung Galaxy Tab 3. Everything about it was a big upgrade. The performance, the camera, and he was even running iOS 10 at the time, which was the newest version of iOS at the time. And, it performed pretty good on iOS 10. It was so much faster. I could download every app just fine. The camera, I had an 8 megapixel camera I could film 1080p video on. This thing was awesome, and it was much more compact. It was pretty small at the time, but I mean, it wasn't honestly too bad because the iPhone SE was only like a couple months old. But it was such a huge upgrade over this guy, like in every single way imaginable. Like, this is a few months newer than the iPhone 5, but the iPhone 5 has aged so much better than this. Like, it's not even a joke. Like, even at the time, back then, like, I don't think people were even guessing or gonna think that, an iPhone this old could actually still be okay, and even for around then, because this thing was already 4 years old when I bought it, and it was still running the latest version of iOS just fine, it wasn't anything bad like the iPhone 4S on iOS 9 now. That was pretty bad. But yeah, everything about it was a big upgrade. It was so much better in every single way. I remember the first games I started downloading once I got this phone were Angry Birds, and I started downloading a bunch of Talking Tom apps. It really brings back memories to like Christmas 2016. That was a really good Christmas. I really liked that. And I remember I started filming a bunch of random videos on the thing, just testing out the camera because I wanted to try it out because, it was so much better than what I had before. So I was, taking advantage of that time, and I was only 13, so they were pretty bad videos. One video I remember in particular I filmed was a prank call video where me and my cousin were just prank calling his friends. Very cringy video. I would not recommend you watch it. Please don't scroll down and find that video because it's going to hurt, at least for me. And it was really cool, getting to use an iPhone for the first time. Even though it wasn't the newest thing, it was still much better than the Galaxy Tab 3. It was still running the latest version of iOS, which at the time I didn't know a whole lot about that. It was until a couple months later that, I kind of started to learn most of that. But this iPhone did have a really big problem. By the way, I forget to mention, this is not the original iPhone 5 that I had when I got it back then. I actually ended up selling that just for an iPhone SE. Yeah, this is it's the same. It's not the original one, but it is the same phone, same color. I do believe it's also the same memory, 16 gigabytes. But this phone had a really big problem, and that was the battery. So after like the first 2 days, everything seemed fine. It was after 2 days later I did begin to notice that, okay, what's going on? Like it randomly shut off on me. I don't know what happened there. And I was like, okay, that was weird. So I ended up plugging the phone back in. It lasted me okay, then it died again. And then after a few days, I came to realization, oh damn, this thing has a bad battery. And it would, the battery would go down kind of fast and even just die if it was like at 50%. And it got a lot worse as time progressed. Towards my last few days with this phone, this thing would not even hold a charge anymore. I'd have to have it on the charger. And at the time I had bought like a cheap portable battery from Target that was like $5. I don't have that one anymore. It just stopped working. But yeah, after my last few days with this phone, the battery was just not working anymore. It was practically unusable. And also, my last days with this phone, it was already out of date with iOS support because iOS 11 was a thing, and this thing was stuck on iOS 10. So the time I did own this, I owned this from my 13th birthday in November 2016 to Christmas 2017. In that time, I had a good time with this phone. I definitely do have some nostalgic memories from it. Christmas 2016, summer 2017. It was really fun using this phone. It was actually a really nice experience minus the battery. It didn't even run that slow at all. But it was until iOS 11 did come out and I found out that this thing wasn't going to get it. I was like, okay, I guess I need a new phone already, even though I just got this a couple months ago. I was looking around for choices. Particularly, I was looking around for an iPhone 6. And those at the time were even kind of expensive. They're like $350, and I was like, oh man, I don't have that kind of money. But I wanted to get something good that would last me a while and I could still use without it being too slow. So after 1 year of using this phone, it did a really good job for me. I was really impressed with how it lasted me, and I had a good time with it. Definitely a lot better than the Tab 3. I wasn't as frustrated except for the battery. But even around the time after I stopped using this, it was out of date with iOS support and the battery just couldn't hold a charge anymore. So for Christmas 2017, my dad gave me this. This is an iPhone 6 Plus in gold. Again, it's not the original one I had back then, but it is the same phone and the same color. I do believe the setting configuration is a little smaller than the one I originally had. That one was 64 gigs, this one is 16 just because it was cheaper. So my dad gave me this for Christmas of 2017 because he had just bought an iPhone 8 Plus at the time, and that was like one of the newest iPhones, of course with being the iPhone 10 and all. But he didn't see a use for keeping this around, and he knew I desperately needed a new phone just because this one was getting outdated and the battery was garbage. So he gave me his old iPhone 6 Plus that he had from 2014 to 2017. And this phone was absolutely amazing to use. I remember being so excited when I got it. This was my first plus-sized iPhone, so comparing it to the iPhone 5, yeah, this thing was massive. And the gold color looked really nice as well. It was running iOS 11, and iOS 11 is known for probably being the most buggy version of iOS. But honestly, for me, I didn't even notice many issues at all, like barely any. And the iPhone 6 was one of the phones that was affected by it, especially because it only had 1 gig of RAM. But I didn't even notice that much. It was honestly fine, I was able to do stuff. I didn't even notice anything, like any slowdowns. It pretty much felt the same as my iPhone 5. And this was already fine for me, so I was like, okay, yeah, it's okay. But yeah, it was my first plus-sized iPhone. It was a nice upgrade. The size. The camera was a nice upgrade, I guess. It only had minor incremental upgrades. I could record in 60 FPS, but just like every other device I had before, this thing did have a problem. And it's that there was dust in the camera lens because my dad works landscaping, so he had this thing in his pocket a lot. And dust got in the camera lens, and whenever you opened the camera, it was blurry and you could not focus it. So I did eventually plan on getting that fixed, but I'll tell you why I didn't in just a few moments. But I was talking about the nice upgrades over my iPhone 5. The main upgrade that was so much better was the battery. The battery still wasn't great. It would go from 100 to 50 in an hour and a half. But honestly, considering what I went through with this, it was a big upgrade, I was fine with it. I remember in particular, I really wanted to start a gaming series on this thing. So I kind of started getting a bunch of games like Minecraft Story Mode, GTA. Because I had gotten an iTunes gift card of $50, I think it was like $100. So I bought a bunch of games and all that cool stuff. And I wanted to do a gaming series where I played games on my phone, but I never got around to doing that just because, I always was interrupted, or there were some issues with the screen recorder, with the mic not working or the audio being all weird and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I never got around to doing it. One memory I do remember is I actually used to play Strange Driver 2 a lot on this phone, and I would always just screen record the most random things, like the most random videos on the game. If you guys are a bit of early viewers, or you guys were watching my channel around that time, like late 2017 to early 2018, you guys saw that I did just film a bunch of random stuff. And yeah, you know, I really liked it. You know, it was a lot of fun. The gold color was nice. But I only had this phone for about a month, and I'm about to explain why. So literally, like about 2 weeks after I had got this phone, my brother broke his iPhone 6 and it was totaled. It was completely destroyed. So the only thing he had to go back to at the time was his old iPhone 4S. And keep in mind, this is early 2018, so by then you don't want to be using an iPhone 4S, especially on iOS 9. And you know, it was frustrating for him because, you know, the performance was crap compared to an iPhone 6 on iOS 11 was probably just a whole lot better, you know? So it was like late January of 2018. He made a deal with me saying that if I gave him my iPhone 6 Plus, he would give me his 4S to sell, and he also just give me an extra $50, and I could sell his iPhone 4S and my iPhone 5. I was like, okay, this could probably work. So I did the deal with him, and basically, like I said, I only had this phone for about a month. So I gave him my iPhone 6, he gave me his old 4S, and he gave me $50 as well, just for a bit of extra money. And I sold my iPhone 4S and my iPhone 5 to a friend, and I think he gave me about $130 for both of the phones, so it was like $180. So I went to eBay, I looked for some iPhones, but there was one phone I really wanted in particular, and it was kind of cheaper on the time. Thankfully, we found a good deal for one because, you know, for the iPhone I bought at the time, it was a little more over $250, but thankfully we found a deal for about $150, or it was like $160, I forgot. But it was like late January that I ordered the phone, and the phone arrived in early February, and that was this guy, the iPhone SE from 2016. And here it is. This is the 2016 iPhone SE. So I went with this phone because it was, it reminded me a lot of my iPhone 5 because of the size, and I was like, honestly, the space gray color looks so nice on it. And this was the cheapest good iPhone I could afford at the time, you know, because it had the A9 processor, so it was running the same chipset as the 6S, which was only about 2.5 years old at the time, and you know, it ran really well. You know, everything about it. I managed to move all my data. I started playing Train Simulator on this thing again. The size was definitely, you know, a lot smaller than, at least compared to the 6 Plus, but you know, it brought back, I was like, honestly, I still feel like I'm using my iPhone 5, but you know, it was still fine because it was running the latest version of iOS just fine. Also, the camera was a good upgrade. You know, it had 12 megapixels and I can record in 4K. I do have a couple videos in 4K that I recorded on this, and you know, I really enjoyed it. Some particular memories, I just remember, you know, Spring Break 2018, I think is probably the most that I can remember of this phone, because I was like taking lots of videos with it, and you know, it was nice. You know, I kind of miss those days sometimes. And you know, it's primarily around spring 2018 and, you know, a bit of summer of 2018 that I was using this thing a lot, and I was like taking pictures and videos. Like, oh dude, this phone is nice. You know, I really liked it. But I think you guys can guess what I'm about to tell you. Just like with every single past device, this thing had an issue, and it was pretty damn annoying. So the reason I actually had gotten a good deal for this phone, because I bought it in 64 gigs, and usually around early 2018, that would have costed $250 used on eBay. We found this one for $160. I was a little suspicious. I was like, okay, it's a good deal, but I don't know if there could be something wrong with it, but it seemed fine to me at first. That was until a couple days after I bought it that I noticed that the screen was slightly broken. And I'm talking about the LCD on the inside, because it would randomly do ghost touching at times, or the touch was basically broken in some areas, and it did get really annoying. You know, because I was like, dude, I can't use this thing, you know, this thing was like ghost touching on me, and it was really annoying. And that was like, oh, damn it. I knew it was too good to be true that this iPhone wouldn't have an issue, because all my other past devices did have an issue, and this one had one as well with ghost touching, and it was pretty annoying, and throughout the time, it got a lot worse. So this phone, I only had this phone for about 5.5 months, and the reason for that is because I destroyed it, because I was careless back then. I never used my phone without a screen protector and a case. So, you know, this thing went through some pretty brutal drops, even one point to chunks of glass were missing here and even on the camera. But what really got me to stop using this was the back camera stopped working, and that was probably after a drop. At first I thought it was a software issue because this happened in summer and I was running the iOS 12 beta. I thought that was an issue, and the worst part is I was in vacation. I was in San Antonio when it happened, and I was like, oh damn. So you know, I actually remember we went to this mall in downtown San Antonio. My dad was actually willing to actually get the screen fixed for me, but we realized that the camera was also broken, so we were like, let's wait till we do that before we see what happens. Honestly, if I was smarter back then, I would have known the rear camera was broken. I would just say, okay, maybe he can fix it just by swapping the camera, but I did not know that at the time. I thought it was a software problem. Needless to say, I was pretty pissed off, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? Thankfully, we did have a solution to fix my problem here. So around the time, this was like late July 2018, my brother had just bought the iPhone X, which was the newest phone at the time, and I was like, dude, that's so badass. But he was using this. So you're probably thinking, wait, what happened to the 6 Plus that I gave him? Well, he actually ended up trading that one in for a smaller 6 because he preferred the smaller one, and that was the phone that he had before I gave him my 6 Plus, the one that he destroyed. So I guess he didn't like the Plus that much, so he ended up trading this one for a smaller 6. That one, when he did got it, it had a cracked screen and a horrible battery, but he got all that fixed. And you know, when he got the iPhone X, he had that phone lying around, so I ended up using it, and this is it, the iPhone 6 right here. It's not the original model. The original one had a gnarly scratch on the back, and it had lots of scratches. This one is dead. This one has a horrible battery. It has like a 42% capacity. I've been charging it for the past 3 hours, but it's not turning on. It will turn on eventually. I just gotta give it maybe 6 hours, but right now I can't get it to turn on. But this is the phone. It was a bit of a downgrade, you know, because it was like one chipset older. It was running the A8 chip compared to the A9, and you know, the SE had 2 gigs of RAM. This one had 1 gigabyte of RAM. And you know, at first I didn't even notice any issues at all or any differences. You know, the phone ran fine. This one actually didn't have any issues, believe it or not. I guess the only thing that bothered me a little was the gnarly scratch on the back. Even that wasn't too bad, or anything too bad to bother me. And you know, this one had no camera issues, no battery issues, no screen issues, and you know, it worked fine for about a few months, and then afterwards it got water damaged. So I was at the state fair and I was recording with my phone because it was raining, and it was raining pretty bad, but it was a bad mistake because the phone got water damaged and a part of the screen stopped working. Now what I remember, this is actually a bit of an interesting story. I was going actually to get my SE fixed, but something else happened that I couldn't do that. So this actually happened on the day of my 15th birthday in 2018. It's a crazy story. So I was gonna turn the ceiling fan on or off. I don't know. I was reaching for the fan and I had the phone in my hand, and it fell to the ground, and the top portion of the screen popped out, and you know, half of the screen, the touch just died. And I was like, oh shoot. Now the reason that I ended up getting this phone fixed, so basically what I did was the next day I ended up getting this phone fixed and I ended up keeping it. So you may be wondering, why not just, you know, why didn't you just fix the SE? Well, because the thing is, the phone died eventually and I couldn't unlock it. So meaning, what I wanted to do is I couldn't transfer all my data. And I already had a lot of things here, like more than before on my previous phones. So I was like, dude, I have too much data, I can't risk losing it. So, you know, if I went to get the SE fixed and not the 6, I'd be pretty screwed. And I got this thing fixed, so I was like, okay, the touch could work again. And I didn't have enough money to get both phones fixed, so we only went with this guy. And afterwards, it did actually start to run okay again. You know, it worked good. I bought a case for it, an OtterBox, and that fixed most of my problems, or I thought it would, up until December 2018. That's when the home button stopped working completely. Touch ID still worked, but I couldn't click on the button, and I was really irritated. I was like, dude, what the hell? I didn't know what caused it. I don't think it was a drop, but now in my mind, I knew what it was, and it was the repair shop. Whenever they fixed my phone, whenever they fixed it, when they got the screen replaced in November, I don't think they closed it correctly, and something might have gone into home button that broke the cable. Because this repair shop actually doesn't have very good reviews, and I just now found that out. So I think that's what caused the home button to stop working, and it really pissed me off. until eventually later I found out about assistive touch. I didn't know about that at the time. I was like, oh dude. Once I found out, I was like, okay, this makes my life so much easier. And you know, it worked fine. I was like, okay. At least Touch ID was still working, so I was able to unlock the phone fine. Then in February, I ended up cracking the screen with my case on. That just made me believe that I guess the iPhone 6 has a bad material. I even made a whole video about it. I remember that. But as time went on, you know, the battery was actually degrading really fast, and this thing was getting really slow. And I mean, it was pretty slow. This is the first time I noticed a big slowdown for the first time in years since like my Galaxy Tab 3. Wasn't as bad, but it was still really annoying. And this fast forward to so I had this phone for about a year, and then we fast forward to August 2019, where I finally got my first YouTube paycheck, and this one was a big one. And this was from a very old video that actually got 1 million views. I don't want to talk about that video, but it gave me a pretty big check, and I was like, okay, the new iPhones were around the corner. I was like, okay, it's time to buy a new iPhone, and an actually good one. And one that costed me a good amount of money, but I didn't want to spend too much on it. I actually ended up buying this one a little bit before the new iPhone 11 came out, because I was like, I desperately need a new phone, and I still wanted to keep the home button. So I ended up buying this. This is the iPhone 8 Plus. This is actually my original one. This is the only old phone I have that's still my original one, the one I bought in 2019. And my gosh, this thing was probably the biggest upgrade ever. So this one, I bought it for $550 on eBay. And this thing was a huge upgrade in every single way imaginable at the time. The screen size, it was nice to have a Plus phone again. It brought back memories from my iPhone 6 Plus. But you know, it had the A11 chip, which was a way better processor, more RAM. It had a much better camera. You know, performance was so much better. Home button actually worked now. And it was, at the time, the iPhone 6 had lost support for iOS 13, which was about to come out. And this guy actually was going to get iOS 13 because it was only about 2 years old at the time. So I was like, wow, they dropped support so fast. So that was another big upgrade. I was getting iOS 13, and you know, everything about this phone, I was like, dude, this feels so much better. And this actually had a brand new battery in it. It had a 100%, the battery capacity was 100%. But I eventually checked later on 3U Tools and saw that it did get repaired before the guy sold it to me. So I was like, oh, that's nice. And yeah, the battery life was just so much better. Everything about it was great. You know, it was nice that I was still, you know, able to use the home button and stuff. It was a capacitive button, so it's not actually physical. So it's a little less hard, or it's, you know, it's not as easy to break it compared to like any phone with the physical button. But yeah, this thing was so much better, dude, in every way imaginable. I remember it went straight to playing Train Simulator around also Christmas 2019, so it did bring back some memories. Those videos are gone as well. They weren't the best. But yeah, this iPhone was the one that has lasted me the longest amount of time. I just recently upgraded from this phone about a month ago. But you know, everything about it coming from the iPhone 6 was so much better. I had such a great time with it. It lasted me 3 years. This thing had no issues at all. I did eventually run into a few. But yeah, everything about this phone, once I bought it from my iPhone, or once I upgraded from my iPhone 6, it was like, dude, this thing has to be the biggest upgrade I've ever gotten. And it was, because, you know, I used this phone for 3 years up until a month ago. And this was actually the first iPhone that I ended up getting service on. And I ended up using my dad's plan with Sprint, and you know, we did eventually change to T-Mobile after Sprint merged, and I'm still using T-Mobile today. But this was my first iPhone that I ever had service on, and that alone just changed my life, dude. Like, changed my experience with using a phone, because now I can actually use the internet like anywhere outside of my house where I'm not on the internet, and that was pretty good. But again, Sprint isn't also the best either, so you know, the signal wasn't great in a lot of places, but you know, honestly, it was better than not having service at all. This phone has been with me through some of the rockiest points of my life, you know, particularly COVID. When that happened, that was bad. I ended up getting depression. I don't know if I told you guys, but yeah, I was using this phone. You know, this phone rode with me, or was along the journey through all that time, you know, and even as the years progressed, you know, one problem I did eventually run with this phone, it was in April 2021. I made a story time video about it, but basically the SIM card, or not the SIM card, but the service just completely just died. I don't know what happened, but basically I noticed that it said no service, or it said searching. So the signal just died. I don't know what happened there. But it ended up making the phone almost unusable as well. Like trying to load apps would freeze. I couldn't use messages. I couldn't use FaceTime. It would all just lag. I would open up messages and it would be stuck on a blank screen for about a minute. Then, you know, once it loads, I try using it and it freezes and it eventually crashes. And I don't know what happened there, and it was the service that completely ruined it. So, and I went like this for a day and I was really pissed off. I was like, dude, what's going on? I ended up calling Sprint that night. They ended up sending me a new SIM card. Well, actually, the thing is, it actually fixed itself like the next morning. But then later on, I still got my SIM card and I ended up swapping it. I still ended up swapping the SIM cards because I was like, okay, there could be something wrong with it. I'm switching it anyway because I don't want to risk it happening again. And that never happened again after I put in my new SIM card. And I was using a Sprint SIM card. So the one they sent me was a T-Mobile one because it was already when they merged, when Sprint and T-Mobile had merged. So that was the only main issue that I had with this phone that was like really drastic. And eventually, last August, I got the battery replaced because it was starting to show its age. I got the battery fixed for $50, and you know, now it's showing its age again after about a year. It's at 87% capacity. And you know, now it's go forward to just recently. So this thing was it's the oldest supported iPhone on iOS 16. I was like, wow, that is crazy. Because I thought it would be the iPhone 7, but I was wrong. So, you know, I was like, okay, maybe sooner or later it's going to be time to upgrade. And as soon as iOS 16 came out, this phone I did actually begin to notice a drastic performance decrease. I think primarily it might have to do with the battery also. But this thing starting to slow down a good amount. Not anything that was too annoying like my iPhone 6. I was still able to use it fine. You know, I could still make phone calls, I could text, I could watch YouTube just fine, I could download apps just fine. But I did notice it was significantly slower than before, and probably compared to what I would if it was like a different iPhone, anything newer. And this phone is now 5 years old, and I already had it for 3 years. I was like, okay, I think it's about time. So I waited for the new iPhones to launch. I originally had my idea to get the iPhone 14 Pro Max on Black Friday because I wanted to actually get a good deal on it. But then, you know, as November came in, I was doing my research on it and I was like, oh, they don't have Black Friday deals for the newest iPhones. So I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm gonna have to figure this out. So, you know, with time I kept doing my research. I was like, okay, I gotta find a new iPhone to buy. And I was looking at that Amazon will usually have Black Friday deals for some of the older iPhones. So I was like, okay, which one should I go for? And the next iPhone I went for, I'm about to show you guys in a second, but I bought my next iPhone about like a week before Black Friday because Amazon's deals had already gone live. I was like, okay, they went live a week early. So I upgraded from this big dinosaur that I had for 3 years and coming to my most recent iPhone that I purchased a month ago, and is currently my current iPhone, is the iPhone 13 Pro in blue. So it's completely different from when I showed it to you guys. I put a camera protector and a back screen protector, and I have a front screen protector. And this was what I upgraded to from this after 3 years. This thing lasted me so long. It lasted me really good. I never broke it. You could still see the condition of it is good. It's just a screen protector that's a little cracked, and the back as well. My screen protector I had on this, I had it for 3 years and I only replaced it in August. So that's impressive that I never broke it to that bad extent that, oh, it's broken, I can't use it anymore. You know, I could still use this thing if I absolutely had to. But it was showing its age, and I bought this, the iPhone 13 Pro in blue. So I actually made a video a month ago where I unboxed it because it was an Amazon renewed iPhone. And that video is actually already getting like 1,000 views. I guess a lot of people are really interested in buying phones off of Amazon. So I bought this thing for about $800. It was $750 plus taxes. Total came to $800. And it's a 256 gigabyte iPhone 13 Pro. And it's a pretty good deal. And this thing, in every way imaginable, is a bigger upgrade compared from this. Or I mean, from my iPhone 6 to my 8 Plus, that was a huge upgrade. And this one just takes it up a notch in every way imaginable. Battery life, the camera, the screen, 120 hertz display. You can see that. Face ID, I now have Face ID, and it's incredibly fast. So look at the smoothness with that 120 hertz screen. It's amazing. It's OLED. This thing has 5G, the cameras, you know, it has ultra wide now. It has, you know, it's so much better in every way. It looks a little foggy, sorry. But yeah, this you know, just bumped the increase, or no, the upgrade of a phone like up a notch from like my iPhone 6 and my 8 Plus. You know, this was another big upgrade in every other way, and it's a lot faster as well. And this phone is only a year old. Primarily, I didn't want to go in anything older than the 13 Pro just because of the 120 hertz display. And I freaking love this phone. I've had it for a month, and it's fantastic. I really love it. You know, because I was looking at the reviews that, you know, Amazon renewed iPhones aren't always great. Sometimes they come broken or with some issues. Thankfully, I haven't had a single issue with this phone since the day I got it. This thing has been running flawlessly. It runs great. I love it. I spent too much time on it, but this is my most recent iPhone that I just upgraded to a month ago. It's the iPhone 13 Pro, and yeah, it's been. I really like this thing. This is my first iPhone I get that's full screen also. Worth mentioning that, because every device I've had before has had a home button, and this one is my first full screen phone. So I already got used to it. I got used to it within like the next day. It took me a little while to kind of also adjust the placement of the buttons, because this is smaller than my iPhone 8 Plus, which I had before. But I'm used to it now, and honestly, going back to this, I'm like, okay, this is too big. I really like the size of the smaller 13 Pro. It's good enough, you know, it's not too bad. At least probably if I was using something like at least like the iPhone 6, like it's not even close. Like this thing is a little bigger, and it's still good enough. It actually is bigger than the 8 Plus, like with the screen, but diagonally, the 8 Plus is actually a lot bigger just because, you know, this is the size and it has all the bezels and stuff. But this, the screen wise, is bigger. So I do notice that. And it is awesome. And yeah, those are all the phones that I have gone through in the last 8 years. So starting from 2014 with the Galaxy Tab 3 to the iPhone 5 to the iPhone 6 Plus to the iPhone SE to the iPhone 6, 8 Plus, and now the 13 Pro. So here's the evolution. The very first one got in Christmas 2014. Second device, first phone, November 2016. Third device, second phone, Christmas 2017. January 2018, July 2018, September 2019, and November 2022. Very first electronic device versus my current phone, and it's quite the difference. You could see what I started with 8 years ago to what I have now. And first ever iPhone to my most recent iPhone 5 versus the 13 Pro. You could see it's quite the difference. Definitely, you know, in every single way. It's really crazy to see how much I've evolved in terms of like what I've been using, and you know how rapidly, you know, time is passing by, and as you know, as the quicker the time gets, technology progresses, and it's crazy to see that this is what I was using years ago. You know, first device, first phone to what I use now. It's insane. It's been quite a ride, without a doubt. And yeah, that is going to be it for this video. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this video, guys. I don't know how long it is, but I just know it's going to be pretty long because I was talking a lot, telling you guys, you know, not just telling you guys the devices I use, but my story behind them, you know, how I was using it, you know, the time I had with it, just all the crazy stories. And yeah, it was really fun talking about all the devices I've ever used. It's been so long, and I've used so many devices, and it's been a wild ride. And the next video I'm doing is the camera evolution. That one might be a little bit shorter. But yeah, Merry Christmas Eve, everybody. It's 1:50, so I've been talking for maybe about an hour now. But it's probably a little shorter with the editing I do, maybe about half an hour. But yeah, it's been fun doing this one, and now I'm gonna do my camera evolution video. That one I'm gonna take it up a notch and do some tests outside, and it's freaking cold outside because we just had a, you know, really bad temperature drops in these last couple days. It's slightly warmer now. It's like 35 compared to like Thursday. Thursday was horrible. It was like in the negatives, but now it's gone up a bit, so it should be a lot better. So that's what I'm gonna do outside and just talk about the cameras I've used. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and again, Merry Christmas, everybody. Hope you guys have a happy holidays, spend it well with your families, or if you don't celebrate Christmas, then I guess it is around Hanukkah, so happy Hanukkah as well if you celebrate that. Or if you just don't celebrate the holidays in general, then I guess happy Saturday. But yeah, happy holidays to you guys. I hope you guys spend it well with your families. And yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace.